Hello, my good friend, Dr. Russo. How are you?
Hello, Shashi. It's good to talk to you again. It's been always too long every time I see you. So I wish we talked more often, but it's always great when we do finally get together.
Joe, thank you for joining, today. I am going to represent Simplast, obviously, and I'm going to moderate our conversation. Um, and I represent not only Simplast, but I represent a fellow plastic surgeon in the aesthetic space. And I'm going to wear the hat of somebody who's interested in seeing, proper patient advocacy, proper patient safety, and proper guidance and oversight and training and all the rest of it as well, because I'm a bit of an old schooler, kind of like you, and I kind of like the traditional way of training, and there's been a lot of good that came out of it. And you and I have known each other for a while now, and we speak about the industry changes and what kind of impact it's having to the medical community, to the patient community, and the and the efforts of regulatory bodies and government and industry and investors and the like. So, just to set up the framework for this, essentially, we're going to talk mostly about the medical spa industry. And medical spa industry is something that's blossoming these days, because every other day you find somebody who's opening up a med spa all over the country. There's a tremendous amount of interest from the investor base because they see it as a bright light in the morass of healthcare. It provides some degree of independence for a lot of people, and also gets them out of the insurance world and the hospital world. And so there's a lot of interest, not only from physicians of all types and creed, not just core plastic surgeons and core dermatologists, but primary care doctors, OBGYNs, and dentists, and all kinds of folks. In addition, it appears that a lot of ancillary providers like nurses, nurse practitioners, physicians assistants, aestheticians, and the like are also streaming into this. And to add to the pool of interested parties, device manufacturers, injectable manufacturers, and distributors are vastly promoting the democratization of this industry so that they can sell more product, more devices. Many weekend courses are popping up everywhere for educational seminars that you can go to for some fee, and that's become a cottage industry of its own. And when you sit and look at this as a core surgeon in aesthetic space, and as somebody who's been doing it now for almost 17 years in my case, and a little longer for you, I kind of feel a bit lost, so, to be honest with you. There's a meeting every week, so there's a lot going on. So give me a little bit of your thought process on what's happening to the industry at large.
I feel like we're one step away from being on life support in this industry, and I'll tell you why. There's been a huge influx of new providers who are inadequately trained, who don't understand compliance. Other people just aren't interested in compliance, and they're just interested in making money and building up med spa, kingdoms, and selling and making multiples on private equity groups. But it reminds me of like the patient who's been ill, and they just don't want to go to the doctor because they don't want to deal with it. They keep getting more and more sick, and finally one day they have a massive coronary and they die, or something terrible happens to them. And I feel like that's what's happened to the industry. More and more untrained people are entering the industry, getting bad results on with patients, and they're not compliant, so they're breaking the law. And all of a sudden, this kind of comes to a head at one point, and a certain number of people are injured. The Board of Registration of Nursing, Medicine, DPH, cosmetology get involved. They shut it all down for nurses and mid-level people and make it harder for us. When all of this can be avoided if we just look at the situation realistically and say, in what other specialty in medicine or any other job or thing that you may do in your life, do you just go in with no training and start to, work on people, right? I mean, it's different if you're working on cars or, putting up drywall or whatever you're doing. But when you're dealing with people's lives and faces and well-being, and you're going into that situation relatively untrained, what do you think is going to happen? And nothing good. So for me, it's like a red alert, and that's why you find we've talked so much, and you find me being so passionate about it because I'm like, I feel like Don Quixote, sort of yelling at the windmills because no one's really listening, Shashi, the way you are. But I've been in the industry a little longer than you, and I've seen it from its very infant sort of development stages up to the point where we are now, and I just see danger all around us. I see tremendous amount of complications and bad outcomes everywhere I go. And I find even some of the quote unquote more advanced providers, when you talk to them or try to teach them in a class, they have very little understanding of anatomy, of what products to use, how to be safe. So it really scares me. And that's kind of the main feeling I have when it comes to this.
So, I mean, when we first met, I do remember we talking about it at the very first, our first or second conversation we had. And I know you've been working on some type of educational system or methodology and some type of a very core, like almost like we were trained in a sense. So talk to us a little bit about, that the genesis of that, the birth of that actually.
Yeah, I started training nurses and other healthcare professionals a little more than 15 years ago, more or less out of necessity, because it was about that point in time that nurses were trying to get involved with injectables. And up to that point, like physicians, as you know, really controlled all the injectables. They were the only ones who did it. And when nurses started getting involved, their training was really sort of different than what we would hope that they would have had. My two nurses went to a course in Florida. My office manager went down there. She was their model. A nurse flew in from Texas, and this nurse trained 15 other nurses in a hotel room in Florida. And each of my injectors injected my office manager once, half on each side of the face. And then they flew. They weren't even really being observed while they injected. They flew back to Boston. The another nurse flew back to Texas, and they never met again or talked or had any additional training. But they thought at that point that they were ready to go. And when they came back, they didn't even know how to reconstitute the product. They didn't even know what the products were. They knew nothing about anatomy. And after this happened a few times, my wife looked at me and said, What are you doing? Why are we sending these people to all these different places? They're getting subpar training. You're having to train them all anyway with what why don't we just do it ourselves and make our own school? We can do it better than them, and we can continue to educate them. Because as you know, in medicine, it's a requirement to have continuing education because it changes all the time, right? So if you just learn one thing and never learn anything else, you are so far behind, right? So that was kind of our initial concept. It's like, let's create a school. It took us about a year to do it, and we started rolling it out. And believe it or not, within a very short period of time, we were getting huge numbers of people, only because we were one of the few places that actually had a real program where we have people inject a lot of patients, a lot of models. It was very intensive. I designed the whole curriculum. My wife was one of the trainers. We sort of did it from the ground up, like a bootstrapping startup kind of thing. And within a short time, we were the best school in Massachusetts. And I think now we're probably one of the best in the nation, because we've grown from that little tiny 400 square foot space in the office of my building where you've been, to not having two 10,000 square foot buildings, one in Massachusetts, one in Connecticut. And we teach about 100 people a week. We train somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 students. And we're just adding more and more courses all the time and getting better and better. But what really makes us different is, like, we have a comprehensive curriculum. It's not like you take one course and go somewhere else and take another and go somewhere else and take another. It's like you can come to our school and take 25 courses if you want to. You can have everything you need to know in aesthetics. It's all there. And what really separates us from everybody, and I think it's the only thing that's really critically important, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is the amount of hands-on you get. So if you're a clinician and you inject one person with neurotoxin and the people sign you up, so yeah, you're ready to go, Shash. You injected one patient. You know that's not adequate. We know it's not adequate. The person who's been trained know that's not adequate. When you come to our course for Introduction to Neurotoxin, you get 16 CME credits. You have an on-demand component for 4 hours that I've done. Then you come in on day one and you get another didactic and you inject somewhere between 6 and 8 patients. And then day two, if you come back for day two, you inject another like 8 to 10 people. So by the time you leave us, you've injected somewhere between 10 and 20 people, all with neurotoxin, all in the same areas, over and over and over again. When you leave us, I really think you know how to inject. At least you know how to get started and how to be safe, because we talk all about safe injection methods. So that's kind of how it started. That's kind of where it's evolving. But that's really just the beginning in terms of, I think, where we're going. What I've just recently done is created a curriculum, a certificate program in conjunction with the School of Nursing here in Boston. And we're actually going to offer it like another semester of credit. So these are, for the most part, nurse practitioners who've trained in family practice, psychiatry, gerontology, something they have no interest in, so they can finally be independent and do aesthetics as nurse practitioners. So when I approached them, I said, well, you realize that the day someone graduates your nurse practitioner program, the day after they can start injecting people with neurotoxin and fillers with no requirement for additional training, no oversight, no requirement for having injected a certain number of people, no oversight for anything. They just can go and do it. And the nursing schools were shocked. They were shocked to hear this. They couldn't believe it. I said, this is the wild, wild west out there right now. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want, and there's no accountability. So they took this very, very seriously. Now we have an 8 or 10 week course where the school will recruit the members of their alumni who've been, have NP degrees. They'll come to our school and they'll sit with us for 8 or 10 weeks, and they'll take 6 courses. They'll be able to, at the end of the time, present you with a certificate saying, Dr. Kusuma, I took 5 courses. I treated 25 patients. I did 66 hours there. I did this paper. They'll have a whole resume of what they've done, as opposed to people who say, well, yeah, I took a course. I injected like 1 patient, and I went a few months later, I injected another patient. It doesn't even compare to that. So that's kind of what I'm hoping, is that we can bring this back to where it should be, which is with the schools of nursing, right? Like, this is really where the education should take place. And then maybe through us or other companies like us, but it has to start at the level of getting some education in a comprehensive fashion before you just go and start injecting people.
So are you saying that this is almost like a specialization within nursing school or nurse practitioner school or PA school or something to that effect? So it's actually, after you graduate from your program, this is an additional course that you would take for some period of time.
It's a whole semester, right? It's like another semester of their training. It's going to cost $10,000. It's a real course. It's a real curriculum, right? It's an expensive thing, but it's a real guarantee of education.
So what kind of certification are you going to provide? A certification from your school or from the nursing school?
It will come from the School of Nursing. You will get a certificate of advanced education in aesthetics from Regis University in Weston, Massachusetts. So it will be a nursing degree, a nursing certificate, not a degree, a certificate. My goal eventually is to say, you know what? Instead of having an RN go to an NP school for 2 years and spend $80,000, take 2 years away from her family, lose time doing aesthetics to do gerontology, just so she can do aesthetics. Why not first introduce aesthetics as part of this curriculum? And then maybe someday we create an aesthetic nurse practitioner, a separate track, a separate degree, because that's really what they want. They don't want to learn about gerontology or psychology or family practice. They want to do aesthetics. So why are we taking them down this road when they really want to go down that road? It makes no sense. And nursing schools.
So let me get this clear, Joe. Yeah. So are you saying that right now the program is geared for nursing school, but nurse practitioner and physician assistant school, that's separate, correct?
Yeah. So Regis College will actually market to physicians, to NPs, to RNs, PAs, everybody in the space. But their primary group that they're personally interested in is their NP group, because they can do it more independently. But it's going to have to start at the RN level eventually. But this is just the first foray into it. But they're going to advertise to all the aesthetic professionals in the space, because they're just really a marketing machine right now. They're not doing any of the training. They don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it. They're happy to let us do it all. So they're just going to send people to us.
Gotcha. Okay, and so like in colleges, sometimes recruiters come to hire people. Is that also part of this program, so that these nurse practitioners can have access to various job opportunities?
Exactly right. And they will actually have a certificate showing all the things they did. And if they came to you and said, look at all the people, I injected 50 people in 8 weeks, like, you're going to be more likely to hire them than someone who says, well, I kind of know how to do it. I did a few of these. It's going to give them a big advantage in the industry. And I think very soon people will be like, and nurses, you know what? Honestly, they do want legitimacy. They do want to be able to show, I took the extra time, I did the extra, studying, I am qualified to do this, because it's a little uncomfortable for them. And I'm sure it would be for you if you weren't fully trained and were trying to, prove that you could do it. You might be the best surgeon in the world, but if you didn't have a degree from anywhere, and if you didn't really have if you just sort of cobbled a degree together, and people were like, well, why didn't you stay at one school? Why didn't you get a real degree? You're going to be at a disadvantage versus someone who went to a really good school where they have everything credentialed. They said, these are all the things I did. These are the number of surgeries I did. It just separates them from everybody else. And I think nurses are searching for that, and that's what we need.
So how do you let the consumer know, the patient know, that this person is X, Y, or Z trained? Is it the responsibility of the individual injecting? Is it is it the group practice or the solo practice that is, hiring that person, or is it like a combined effort from the school also?
I think it's a combination of things. I think there's such a low level of awareness on the part of the consumer. There's such a low level of awareness on the part of the med spa owners and people in the industry because this doesn't exist yet. It's going to start in April. Like this whole idea doesn't exist. So, if you're looking at the med spas, they're trying to hire people and they're having a tremendous amount of difficulty hiring people who are qualified because there just aren't a lot of them. And if they are qualified, they're almost all employed or they're working on their own. So it's really really difficult to find a good provider. But at least if you go to one of these schools, there'll be a job board. So I'm sure it'll be very attractive for med spa owners to say, oh, I know if you go to Regis College and get a certificate program in aesthetics that Russo or whoever runs, I know I'm going to get somebody who's been vetted, who's got X number of experience, and that school will stand behind them, and I will. Because we won't pass you if you're not good. We won't, it's just like anything else. If you don't do well enough, we're not going to be able to pass you and certify you. So it requires a certain degree of expertise to get to that point. So I think the level of awareness has to start. And in fact, what Regis is going to do is get us on a news segment, a local news station to sort of talk like sort of what you're talking about, like what is this? Why is this necessary? Why aren't people getting trained? And sort of answer some of these questions just to start raising the level of awareness. And then once people realize that you can go someplace and get a good education, why wouldn't you go there, right? Because it's sort of makes the most sense. And that's kind of how I hope it'll happen in a multifactorial way.
I mean, it almost sounds like, Joe, that you'll probably shock a lot of people because once you go to the consumer and kind of let them know the lay of the land, I would imagine many of them would be taken aback by the fact that this is what's happening.
Yeah, it is shocking. In fact, that when the nursing schools were so shocked, it didn't really shock me, but it surprised me that they were so shocked, that there was no requirement for any additional education or certification in any way, which is, it doesn't, there's no other part of medicine that's like that. And this is really one of the most difficult areas of medicine, as you know, and one of the most demanding, and the skill level has to be very, very high or we're going to hurt people. I mean, if you, for example, I'm sure you're very well aware of the fact that really what determines patient retention is good outcomes, right? If you have good outcomes and your patients are happy with the way they've been treated, they're likely to come back. So if you look at all the people who are first-time Botox users from the company Allergan that makes Botox, people who got Botox for the first time, and they surveyed their top accounts, 50% of the people who got Botox their first time never came back. Never came back. And these are their top accounts. If you look all the way down the line and average it all together, it's probably like 70% didn't come back. You say, well, why? Botox is great. Well, maybe the person doing it didn't do it well. Maybe the expectations weren't explained. Maybe the patient had unrealistic expectations, a million reasons, right? But the point is that it's 70% of the people are dissatisfied with a product that has, a very high retention rate for people like you or perhaps me who are getting good outcomes. It just shows you how bad the delivery system is, right? It just shows you how many bad people. I don't mean bad.
That's surprising. I did not expect it that high.
It's hugely high. It's hugely high, which is why now Allergan and some of the other companies are really investing heavily in education. And they're actually looking to us to help train some of their new injectors. Like they're looking for me and other people. I mean, Allergan's building brick and mortars. We're probably going to become the first Allergan medical affiliate in the country because they want to go to people where they know they're going to get a good experience with hands-on and get a good experience with the level of training. So they recognize this is critical, but by virtue of some of the numbers I just told you. But very few other people realize it. I think it's all, fun and games. But what's happening right now is the patient's getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And
do you foresee anybody pushing back to this in the industry?
I see people embracing it more than ever because, when I started doing this, there really weren't many competitors at all. Now, everybody's got a school. Everyone's got a cadaver class. Everyone's got a meeting. Everyone's got everything. But what's the quality there? I mean, I don't know. But I think they understand the value and the importance of it. It's just hard to deliver when you've got a million meetings. How good can they all be?
Yeah. So speaking of which, that's a good segue. So we talked about your school and what you're doing, and I've been doing for now sounds like 15 years and trained 5,000 people, and now have a collaboration with Regis, nursing school, and a lot of good stuff happening. Relationship with Allergan to establish a accredited place kind of thing, and kind of provide employment opportunities by networking, etc. So there's a lot you're doing there already. But you talked about meetings. So I know that recently you also launched a meeting called MAP meeting. I've been to it with you recently in Las Vegas. It was a great meeting. Learned a lot. And so tell me how the MAP meeting is connected to the kind of global mandate essentially that you're trying to create here.
Yeah. So most of the groups we talked about, nurses, doctors, med spa owners, estheticians, are all in their own little silos, right? So doctors have their own meetings that nurses can't go to. Nurses have their own meetings that doctors don't want to go to. Estheticians have their own meetings. Med spa owners have their meetings. Business people have their own meetings. So everyone's sharing some of their knowledge, but only among their little group. They're not sharing it among the big group. So my goal was to, as we're calling it, MAP stands for Medical Aesthetic Professionals, which includes all those groups that I just mentioned. So my thought was, why don't we all put together our collective knowledge and share what we know, because each of us has their own areas of expertise that we know a lot about. No one knows a lot about everything, but everyone knows a lot about something. Why not share all of that under the same roof? So as you saw on our stage, we had nurse practitioners, we had RNs, we had PAs, we had estheticians, we had med spa owners, we had doctors, we had entrepreneurs, all presenting in front of all these people. And I'm hoping sort of brought us all together and will continue to bring us all together. So that was my idea, is to let's unite the industry instead of keeping it fragmented, and share the knowledge so that we all gain more insight into really what's happening.
So would there also be an employment opportunity occasion there where you can connect people together also for employment also?
We're planning to have a job board for sure there. Yeah.
And so tell me the MAP meeting. Tell me a little bit about this upcoming year's meeting, and what did you learn and what are you going to do this year?
So this year we're in Scottsdale, Arizona, November 13th through the 16th. And we learned a lot from that meeting. I mean, we learned that it was a good meeting. We're very successful. Thank you for saying that. But I learned a lot of things about what we need more of, what we need less of. And I think one of the things I learned about is we need to see more injecting. Because what I noticed is that when there was an injector or someone who was somewhat well recognized within the industry, the room was packed. And then as soon as the injector would leave and some other person who wasn't really an injector would be up there, people just left the room. I could see I stayed in the room for all 3 days for every single lecture. So I saw the dynamics happening. So I realized what people really need is they really need help with injecting. They really need to see what good looks like. So we're going to have something called Breakfast with the Stars. We're going to have 10 of these injectors, some doctors, some nurses, some NPs, etc., injecting in their own rooms. It'll be sponsored by some companies. Maybe people will have to pay a little bit for it, but they'll be able to sit in close proximity to the injector. Maybe it's a room with 20, 25 people in it, and maybe 10 of these rooms. And so people will do that. Then at the end of the day, we're going to have Injecting with the Stars. So there'll be another whole set of rooms where you can actually pay a little bit more money and you can sit and talk with Dr. Kusuma and watch him do his injections, or watch him do his special things, or watch him use special, combinations of treatments, because you really need to see what good looks like before you can become good. You really have to understand what these people are, where they're coming from. So I realized that was really important to have just more injecting, more live injecting, more people being able to watch it, close up. And the way I found this out was at our meeting when I was walking around. I was walking through the exhibit hall one day. You guys had a beautiful booth there. And I noticed during lunch hour, one of the nurses was talking about one of the neurotoxins. It was in the middle of this chaotic environment. There were 100 people surrounding her, just looking at every move she made. And she was just talking about neurotoxins. I was like, wow, that's telling me something. And then the very last meeting of the day, it was like 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon where there's no one around. I looked up at the stage at the person who was going to be doing the injecting. And this was in Dr. DiBernardo's daughter's face doing tear troughs, right? And I looked up, all the cameras were gone, all the lights were gone, all the PA equipment was gone, everything was gone. And I went over to the PA. I'm like, what's going on? Where's everything? Everyone's left for the day. They thought the show was over. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So a moment of panic set in, but then we took the injector off the stage and put her down below where the people were sitting. We put the people who are watching up on the stage, looking down at her. And it was like the Ether Dome at the Mass General Hospital. Everyone's looking down like this. And it was people were using their phones to give her light so she could see what she was injecting. People were filming her. There were people up on chairs. There were people standing on top of other people. And it was this beautiful moment that we filmed because it was showed 5 o'clock on Saturday night, the last night of the meeting, the last, presentation, people were just glued to it. And it was a moment we captured on video. We're going to show that. But that gave me inspiration. Like I can see what the demand is here. I can see how hungry they are for that. And that's why we're going to have more of it, because it's really critically important.
You know what that reminded me of in our old medical school textbooks, where the surgical theater is down below and there's a gallery up top and everybody's
exactly
seeing.
that. That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Yeah, yeah. So this is again a good segue. So you started with the training. Now you're going to kind of collaborate and connect the industry together with the MAP meeting. Now I want to kind of move over a little bit, and I want to hear about the unique practice that you have and the oversight that you provide to all of your injectors in your circle.
So the biggest challenge in the industry, besides the fact that education is hard to obtain, but we have a solution for that, is compliance, right? So we know that in every state, a nurse cannot provide a medical treatment to a patient without an order from a duly authorized prescriber, which in every state is a doctor and an NP. In some states, PAs can do it as well. So, those people have to provide an order. And again, it's a little different in every state, but I can talk about Massachusetts because I know it well. That order has to be patient specific, date specific, time specific, route specific, dose specific. It has to be a real order and look as though the doctor or the NP whomever is standing right next to the patient. It can't be a standing order. It has to be a real order. And through a cloud-based EHR called Simplas, we've been able to provide that because, let's face it, if a nurse who works in a hospital can't give Tylenol to a patient without a doctor's order, how can they do Botox and fillers without an order? They can't. I know they can't. They know they can't. They know they can't. And so it falls incumbent upon them to get involved in a compliance system. So we offer them the umbrella of compliance by using Simplas so that we can then provide them with a real-time order that's checked by the NP who's issuing the order to be sure that they're offering the right product, the right dose, the right location, all those things. And if it is a compliant and reasonable order, they will send the order over. It'll be in my smartphone. I can pick up my phone and I can check the order. I can check the person. I can communicate that with them. I can do anything I want. But that's the hidden genius. Without the compliant piece, people are out there walking on a very high tightrope with no net below them. And invariably, they're going to get a bad result. They're going to get a complaint filed against them. They may get a lawsuit. And if you have practiced medicine without a license, you have no defense. You are guilty per se. You are negligent per se, and it goes right to damages. I mean, if
so
there's
does this negligence fall on the owners of the med spa as well?
Yeah, I mean, if the individual nurse practitioner who's doing the order does Botox in a patient, and they say, okay, your patient's unhappy, let me see the order, and there is no order, then they're going to say to the nurse, well, how can you practice medicine without getting an order from a nurse practitioner or an MD? And you can't. So there's no argument there. There's no negotiation. There's no defense to it, right? So it's automatically a problem. And these cases are, when these plaintiffs' lawyers get a hold of this, and any of them that are smart enough to sort of look at the law, know that this is an undefensible situation. So that's why we are incredibly strict with what we allow our network to do. Like, we won't let them do temples. We won't let them do nasal injections. We won't let them do tear trough injections unless they've had 5 years of training, 5 years of experience, and they get personally signed off by me or whomever. So we really want to control, because the last thing we want is a bad outcome. We want to protect our patients. We want to protect our providers. We want to protect the industry. And if you're letting people do things they're not really capable of doing, you're inviting trouble.
Yeah. So this brings it to full circle, right? So essentially, the starting of the conversation was about training. Then we went to collaboration and kind of bring the industry together to understand how important all of this is and sharing good information. Then we talked about the compliance piece that is aided by Simplas technology. And then the last part of that is to provide some type of I'm hoping a certification of some type for the actual business, right? So now you had the certification of the individual who's the injector. Then you have the certification of the actual business itself, that it's a very well-run, compliant business. So how do you propose that happen?
We're trying to put together something called the A3P, the American Academy of Aesthetic Physicians or Aesthetic Providers. It's going to be, it's like instead of MAP, it's going to be the American Academy of Aesthetic Providers instead of meeting for aesthetic providers. So this society will be like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval that will have the determinants of what qualifies you as having a compliant med spa. So if you say, hey, Dr. Russo, I've got this med spa, XYZ med spa, and we want to be on your website so you can show everyone that we're compliant. So we would come into your med spa, we would look at what you're doing, we would tell you what it's. Hospitals have the same kind of certification with QASF or our offices or JACO or one of these companies that comes into your place and says, let's see everything. And okay, you're compliant, you're not compliant, you need to do better with your certifications here, with your documentation there, whatever it is. But they give you a pathway and they let you know. And if you are compliant, then you can say, here's your certificate. You are compliant. We can, conform to all of these issues. So we want to be the same thing for med spas. We want to be able to have them on our website if they are compliant. So consumers and providers can go to these places and say, look, I know Dr. Kusuma has a certified med spa. It's accredited, fully accredited. He's totally compliant. That must be a safe place to go. There has to be some objective measurement of good, right? There has to be some objective measurement of compliance. And we want to be the group that sort of determines that.
Do you foresee the American Board of Plastic Surgery or American Academy of Dermatology or some ACGME accredited medical specialty partnering to kind of provide their umbrella for this as well?
That's our hope. Two of my colleagues are talking with the Aesthetic Society right now. They're very interested in what we're doing. They're very interested in sort of having us do the training for their members. But you understand that they're thinking about doctors, right? And plastic surgeons and their groups. But, unfortunately, as you and I have talked about many times, physicians have lost control of this space, right? So they really constitute a relatively small segment of this big pie, which is mostly non-physicians and non-core physicians and, that group. So it's a start. I think once you get recognized by a group like that, that really helps you with your credibility. And then, gives us legs to move forward in different directions.
Well, I mean, I think let's wrap it up there. This was, again, a good start to kind of put all the pieces together. So the training, the meeting, how to actually run it with the help of Symplast technology. So the MAP meeting, the Aesthetic Mentor School, Symplast technology, and the certification to the A3P.
A3P. Just like the A4M, this is A3P.
A3P, gotcha. A3P. So that's kind of like the full package. The next time, I'd love to do part 2 of this, in the near future. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the business side of the med spa and how what kind of investment opportunities exist, who should be, in the business. Should this be a business for corporate, corporate ownership of medicine, all these corporate laws and, medical boards and investment opportunities, how can all that work together, basically?
I will just say this. That's a great idea. This is really one of the most exciting and fast-changing areas in all of medicine. This is transforming itself almost weekly. There's so many new developments and things. And it's really important for us to do this right, because if we don't, it's all going to come crashing down.
Well, Joe, I remember our drive when you were here in Florida, driving by a med spa and saying, you know what? This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy what's happening. And so that was a few years ago, but I'm glad it's coming full circle, because that shows our commitment to doing things right. And we're actually kind of taking a leadership role in this, me from the technology side, you from the training and the compliance and certification side. So I think it's always a collaboration, which is what medicine really is about. It's all about teamwork and collaboration for the benefit of the patient. That's what we all have to always remember. At the end of the day, everything we do, the first principle is patient safety. Patient comes first.
100% right.
On that note, my good friend, let's end it here, and we'll do the part 2 in the very near future.
Thank you, Shashi. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, Nathan, for being the guy behind the scenes. I hope to talk to you guys soon, and we'll keep moving forward.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.